Hello, everyone. This is Cameron Smith from TechLogix. Very pleased to be here today to go through the first of a series of webinars on how to sell fiber optics and all about TechLogix. And specifically today, we are going to talk about dark fiber. And more specifically, especially for our friends who are on the line today who are working with different rep firms, working with different distribution partners, specifically how to sell dark fiber. If you're new to this concept, obviously you know that fiber is becoming a big part of the audiovisual installation. We use it for networking and security and telecom, datacom. We're seeing fiber in a lot of different applications, but the reality is the most of the fiber that's been pulled is being left dark. What does that mean? It means that signals are not being sent through it. It's being used for pre-wiring. That cable that we usually have historically thought about, let's just wire a demarc, let's bring it to the house, let's bring it to the building. Well, now we're starting to see it go in the wall. And a lot of this conversation is around future-proofing. We'll talk about the whys, the wheres here in a minute, but more importantly, we're also going to be talking about how you can help your customers, your partners, really understand how to apply all of this. So let's dive in a little bit more. Let's talk about why we need to think about dark fiber, why we need to integrate this. Why do your customers have to start incorporating optical cable into their projects? Well, video resolution is a big part of the dialogue. We're seeing video resolutions increase in bandwidth. I'll put some context around that. Internet speed also plays into this. Speeds are getting faster, bandwidths are getting bigger. Similar to the video conversation, we have to create a future-proofed install. Fiber is also surprisingly easier to work with than a lot of these shielded twisted pair cables. Good news is we can quantify that with real numbers. And we've got some handouts that we're going to provide to everybody who's on this call today. So you can provide some data to the different folks that you work with. And just as surprisingly, the price point of fiber is very, very competitive. In fact, a lot of folks who are now starting to migrate their installations and incorporate optical cable, they're actually saving money by doing that. But let's start with video. So we all know that video resolutions, they just keep on getting bigger. Last year we saw the specifications for 12K and even 16K get released. Now, while it may be a little while before we incorporate those signals into our installations, 4K is certainly here, and 8K, well, that's finding a way into most residential and even commercial projects today. Here's the problem. Here's what your customers really need to understand. Twisted pair, whether we're talking about Cat 5, Cat 5e, Cat 6, or even really expensive, clunky, quad-shielded Cat 7 maxes out at 10 gig, okay? 10 gig, that's the max ceiling we have to work with. Well, those 4K signals that we're using today, 4K 60, 444, HDR, this has become a pretty standard part of both residential and commercial installs. Well, that's an 18 gig signal. And now we also have to start talking about 8K, which is driving those bandwidths even higher, all the way up to 48 gig. So as we start to look at our projects and as we start to look at what cables are we going to pull, how are we going to deal with the video resolutions that we're frankly using today, we have to think in terms of optics. Very important that if you want to future-proof your installation, if you want to support those native signals, and I always point this out to folks, why would you be investing $10, $20, $30,000 in a projector, $5,000, $10,000 in a flat panel if you're going to compress the signals that are going to it? So fiber is playing a major conversation in the video resolution discussion. But the reality is most of the fiber that will get pulled is being pulled. It's being used for networking. And a lot of that video that we talk about, it's finding its way into the project through the network. And if we look at just the consumer side of this discussion, the residential side of this discussion, what do we see? Well, 2 years ago, 2018, the average U.S. middle-class home, we had 23 connected devices on average. And I'm willing to bet the folks who are on this call today, who are working with integrators, who are engaging customers on a day-to-day basis, they're probably not working with a lot of average middle-class customers. They're probably working with the fairly affluent. They're probably working with a lot of businesses who are doing webinars like this on a day in, day out basis. And it's only going to increase. You know, we look at the amount of people who are working from home today. Well, that takes a pretty big toll on the network. And that number, that 23 average devices in the average US middle class home, that number is expected to eclipse 50 this year, 2020. So whether we're talking about streaming high definition content, you know, this content that's really taking a toll on the network, or we're talking about that security camera, that thermostat, those appliances, that sprinkler system. I've got little kids. Half my kids' toys are Wi-Fi enabled. All of these things have to be managed, and the infrastructure has to be designed for it. So it begs the question, are we future-proofing with fiber? You know, are we really giving our customers good advice to pull a cable that's really going to last for years to come? And here's the reality. If you pull a regular fiber optic cable, and I don't expect the folks, everybody on the call today, to really understand the acronyms. You don't, for the sake of this conversation, you don't need to understand the difference between multi-mode, single mode, OM3, OS2. We've got a lot of good training materials for this. And frankly, we're going to provide you some handouts at the end of this session today that will point you and your customers in the right direction to learn more about this. But the punchline here is those average fiber optic cables support up to 100 petagigs worth of data. It's 10,000 times more bandwidth than that really expensive Cat7 cable. So yeah, we're future-proofing when we incorporate fiber, even if it's being left dark into our projects. So let's really compare this. You know, let's really look at the cables that we've been selling for years and put fiber side by side. What do we see? So for the sake of this conversation, let's pick on duplex single mode. Okay, again, terminology might not mean a ton to folks who are new to this conversation. This is a great webinar to start the journey with. But here's the punchline. Duplex single mode is one of the most common fiber optic cables being pulled out there. It's a universal cable. What do I mean by that? This is a cable that will support audio, video, network, can be even wired for the DMARC. So it's going to do telecom, broadcast, even signals like USB distribution, USB, which is limited to 5 meters. Well, this fiber optic cable will support it. It's also rated for universal applications. What do I mean by that? This is a cable that is rated for plenum, riser in-wall applications, and that same cable can be buried in water applications. So if we put it in conduit outside in the ground and that conduit fills with water and freezes, this cable survives that. Really a universal application, universal function cable. What if I told you that the same cable supports up to 100 petagigs worth of data? Again, we're future-proofing. It's 30 to 50% smaller than Cat6 and Cat7. Oh, and by the way, it's got a 100-pound pull rating. You know, we joke about tying a cable to the back of our truck to pull it through conduit. Well, you can do that with fiber. It's built with Kevlar. This stuff's strong. And that same cable will reliably terminate with reusable connectors in less than 2 minutes, and it costs 20 cents a foot on average. 20 cents per foot for a cable that's easier to pull, easier to terminate, comparably priced, if not less expensive, and future-proofs your installations. That's what fiber does. This is a big reason why we're seeing fiber being pulled dark now. And so much of this conversation when you engage your customers is, how are you future-proofing? How are you managing these signals? You're pulling cable. Why would we pull cable multiple times? Why would we rip open the walls when we can put something in today that's truly going to give you and your customer a better experience for moving these signals today and down the road? well, why aren't we seeing more integrators? And by the way, the fiber optic trainings that we do, and I certainly encourage you to go to the TechLogix website, watch some of our 15 to 20 minute sessions, enroll in some of our certification courses to get BICSI and CEDIA credit. I encourage you and your customers really to take advantage of that. That's a really nice free part of what we do. We train people on this subject, and we've certainly seen the enrollments increase over the last couple of years because more people are warming up to this. They have to incorporate optics into their projects, not just for future signals, but things like 4K and 8K, right? They're here today. But still, what are those objections you're going to get? Where does this come in to the conversation with the integrator? Well, I'll tell you, so much of fiber is dictated by fear of the unknown, right? I don't know how to apply this. I don't know what real applications are out there. I don't know the products. I'm not comfortable with terminating. How can we help walk our partners through these conversations and take this fear out of it? And as you saw, there's a lot of misconceptions out there. This is a brittle cable. There's going to be shards of glass. It's going to be really expensive. And while those misconceptions at one time were true, the fiber optic category has evolved a lot. And arguably the biggest advancements we've made as manufacturers is making this really deployable. And here's where we want people to start. So let's look at a couple of resources we have. And again, you'll get a PDF summarizing all of this information, pointing you to the web, pointing your customer to the web so they can review this. But the first place to start, really application and product guides, okay? We have a very nice online library now where you can flip through real systems. Real systems like, how do I wire a DMARC? How do I connect that security camera? How do I wire two different buildings together using fiber? Oh, and by the way, what are the specific products I use in these applications? So these product guides, and this is right on our homepage. You can see this right on our homepage and link and flip through these. This will be a nice way to acquaint yourself with real world applications, real world products that then can be integrated. We also always point folks towards training and termination videos. Yes, ideal world, folks are going to visit a workshop. We do host CEDIA workshops in person. We even host BICSI workshops now, right? This is something that's a cornerstone of TechLogix business, but the reality is not many of us are traveling right now. Your customers are still wiring projects. So how do we help them get comfortable with the technology? Well, we offer over a dozen different online sessions. Many are only 15 to 20 minutes long. You can take these live, or even better yet, you can watch pre-recorded sessions. These are on the training page of the TechLogix website. And once you start getting comfortable with the connectors, with the cable, we can then watch the termination videos. These are 3 to 5 minute long videos that will walk somebody through the tools and the process to terminate these cables. I will tell you that the reality is, though, most folks who are starting out their fiber optic journey start with pre-made cables. There's nothing wrong with that. Pre-made cables are a great place to start incorporating optics into a project. We have design guides online where you can build those cables really quickly and easily, and even answer some pretty simple questions to make sure you get the right product. Those are also part of the PDF I'll be sending out. Now, a lot of folks are going to come to you and say, all right, I get this. I get that I'm future-proofing. I get that, I can terminate more quickly and easily, but last time I checked, my access point, my security camera, these are devices that I have to plug in today. These aren't fiber enabled. What do I do? Here's one of the nice things about technology, and specifically the electronics part of the conversation. Media converters exist. TechLogix has seen our media converter sales, just exponentially increase over the last year. Why? Because a media converter allows you to use that fiber that's being pulled, that's being integrated with those RJ45-based devices. This lets you take advantages of the benefits of fiber, things like signal distance. I can now take my security camera and I can run it out a mile or more if I want to, using a product that costs less than $100. These media converters are powerful. They're also immune to lightning and static and surges, but it helps you bridge that gap between the electronics that you see today and that optical cable that you need to install for future use. Media converters should be definitely part of the dialogue, and I always want to make sure that everybody understands that these are real products that are out there. Now, the final thing that we're going to touch on before we look at that PDF, I know we said we'd keep this to 20 minutes, and we're going to do that today, is ECOFiber. This is a product line that TechLogix released about 6 months ago, but it's cabling that's specifically designed for the AV market. We have taken optical cable, which is not new. Fiber optic cable has been around for over 50 years, but we've packaged it specifically for that AV integrator. This is that cable that is universal. Use it for audio, video, network. Use it to wire the DMARC. Use it to go in the wall. Use it to connect buildings. It's waterproof. It's plenum rated. And by the way, it's ultra small, ultra pliable, ultra strong, and it's 20 cents a foot. You can see on the screen how this ECOFiber, at least one of the most popular formats, compares to traditional duplex fiber. It's smaller, it's stronger, less expensive. This should be the cable that you are showing to your customers, and you can get cable samples from us. I encourage you, show your customers this format, even if it's a little cutting of the cable, because they'll be surprised at how easy it is to pull this into the next project. And at integrator price of around 20 cents a foot, it's more affordable than a lot of twisted pair. Before we wrap up, I do want to point out that brochure that I mentioned. We will email this out to everybody who's on the call, as well as a recording to today's session. Feel free to share that with other colleagues in your organization. But basically, this is a quick reference guide that you can hand out that answers a lot of the questions that different integrators have. It also really speaks to those problem areas, those question areas, those concern areas, those fear areas that often come into the fiber optic conversation. Things like, where do I see real world projects? What do those projects look like? What's the applications out there? Where do I see videos, webinars? I've got 15 minutes to spare. I want to learn about connectors. I want to learn about, video distribution projects. How do we see those different projects? How do I design a pre-terminated cable? And then one of the most popular areas, how do I terminate? I've got these cables, I've got this connector. How do I put those together to make a functional project? So this is just a quick little resource guide that you can provide to anybody that'll point them in the right direction and get them moving forward with some optical technology. With all that said, I want to thank everybody for your time today. We're coming up on our 20-minute mark. You see my contact information on the screen. This is, again, the first of several sessions we're doing on different optical projects and products. I encourage you to enroll in the other future ones. There'll be also 15 to 20-minute long sessions. Thank you again. Take care. Stay safe out there. And please don't hesitate to reach out as questions come up. Take care.